Hey guys, Dave here. Welcome to the Centurions Review, the punk rock band of wargame review institutions. This is Sticks and Stones microgame number 11 from Metagaming. Looks like it's from 1978. This is the version where you had to cut out the counters so they're really thin. The artwork doesn't look bad for the 1970s though, and the counters are just thin. But anyhow, I'm going to do a synopsis of the rules, and then Len and I will give you a review of it. So let's go through the rule book and explain how this game works. So the counters have attack, defense, and movement. Some of the counters are, you have bowmen, axemen, spearmen, and then you also have dependents, which are like women and children. And you have animals such as dogs. Dogs can attack and fight with you. And in the hunting scenario, the Mastodon Hunt, there's obviously mastodons, and there's goats and goods. Goats and goods are things that you want to capture from the enemy and take off the map in order to get victory points. Well, actually, if you leave them on the map, you get one victory point. If you take them off the map, you get a half victory point. And there's also villages in this: unprotected, protected, and fortified. Sequence of play is super easy. It's just first player movement phase, first player combat, second player movement, second player combat. So very easy sequence of play. Stacking, as far as the stacking limit, there's 3 warriors per side. Dogs count as half a warrior for stacking. And you can have 3 mastodons per hex. And you can have any number of dependents, goods, or goats per hex too. Sometimes you have to stack a warrior or a dependent with like a goat, because a goat has to be escorted. It can't move on its own. And if you're stealing goods, one warrior can steal 1 good. So if they have like 4 goods, you're going to need 4 warriors to steal them and bring them onto your side. Combat's super simple. Essentially, spears can attack adjacent units. Bows have a range of 3, and like axes and everything else has to do same hex combat. And as far as dependents, if you're going to attack them, you have to have killed all the warriors and dogs on their side first. As far as capture of dependents, it's the same thing. You have to get rid of all the warriors and dogs, but when you go to capture the dependents, you have to do a counter attack against you. Actually, it's against all your units attacking them, and I think it's a 1 to 2 odds. So essentially, if you're trying to capture, you need to roll a 5 or a 6 on the combat results table in order for the capture to be successful. And then terrain effects on combat are in this game, terrain stacks, meaning if there's 2 types of terrain, you add their modifiers together. Alright, range combat, we went over that. Talked about capturing. And then there's villages. You can try to burn down villages and stuff too. And there's wind direction in here because fires can spread. And here's the fire table. Shows what happens when if it spreads or if it stays put, or if the fire goes out. Right, and then the scenarios. One thing good about metagaming is they always had enough scenarios. Even though these were tiny little microgames, they usually had sufficient amount of scenarios. So the first one's just a small village raid, where you're trying to steal their dependents, goats, and goods. Of course, their warriors are going to fight back. Second one is Territorial Ritual Battle. This one I did not like. In this one, the initial combat is non-lethal, so in order for it to be successful and for you to get a morale point, you have to attack at the most unfavorable odds as you can, because in order to get a morale point, you have to get an attacker killed result, and obviously the worse odds you do, the more likely you're going to be an attacker killed. And once you finally get 5 more morale points than the other side, then you can try to actually kill someone, and the first side to actually kill someone wins. All right, here's the Mastodon Hunt, which is a solitaire scenario. Essentially, there's some mastodons roaming around, and you're trying to hunt them. This is a lot of fun. This is a really good solitaire scenario. And here's Migration of the Horde. This is basically a clash between villages. All right, Genesis of Warfare. This is basically another. Both sides have villages, and you're trying to win with victory points by stealing each side's dependents and so forth, and goods and so forth. Here's a combat results table. One thing you need to note is, like if you get like an attacker killed result, all attacking units are killed. Sometimes that can really hurt you. Same with attacker wounded, all attacking units are turned over. One thing about this game is you turn over a unit when it loses its first step, but the backside of the counter is just white, so if both sides have units that are turned over, it's hard to tell whose is whose, so you're constantly flipping over counters to see if that's your counter or the other guy's counter. And here's a terrain effects chart, and here's the units. In each scenario, you're given a certain amount of PPT and work points, and 2 PPT points can be converted into 1 work point if you would like to. So here's the amount of PPT and work points you need to buy these different units, and it also lists their attack, defense, and movement allowance, and the amount side has. So Len and I will do our review portion now. Hey guys, Dave and Len here. We just got finished playing Sticks and Stones from Metagaming. This is microgame number 11. This is the original edition from the late 1970s that had the counters where you had to cut them out and stuff, and they were on really thin cardstock. I've played all 6 scenarios of this. He and I, several years ago, played a couple scenarios, and then we just played another scenario today. So what do you think of this game overall, Len?
Well, actually, it isn't too bad. Now, first of all, if I got this in 1978, if this was 1978, I'd be raving about how great this game is. But nowadays, it's like I'd be complaining about the thin counters that are hard to hold and move off.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe the counters need to be bigger and thicker.
They did have a boxed edition of this later with a tiny box, and those ones I think were die-cut or semi-die-cut counters, which are a little bit thicker, but
okay,
but not as thick as today's counters.
Plus, also in '78, there are very few. Since this is man-to-man combat, there are very few skirmish games. Nowadays, I'd look at this and say, "Hey, let me try using the Dungeons and Dragons combat system."
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, actually.
And I'd and try it that way because there's better skirmish games. But on the other hand, it is kind of low complexity, low unit counters. They'll play fast. I think it was a half hour we played.
Yeah, definitely a quick game. Yeah.
After we set up and asked a lot of zillion questions.
Picking out the forces actually takes almost as long as the game because the counters are so small it's hard to read the little symbols on them and stuff, and it's got some crazy system where you have PPT points and WK points, I think, which are worker points, and you can convert the PPT points to WK points at a rate of 2 to 1. But yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like it took a little too long to set up or create your forces.
I was thinking they should just had point system, X number of points. Obviously, armored archers could definitely cost some more points than unarmored archers, and things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and also one thing when you had a lot of wounded counters, you couldn't tell whose side it was whose.
That's true, because when you take a wound, you flip over the counter, so they're two-step counters, but the problem is the backside doesn't have anything written on it, so...
Or just the notes which side you're supposed to be on.
Yeah, it should have something there. Yeah, like you said, just something to at least say what side it belongs to, because it gets confusing. When I got two turned-over counters, and he's got two turned-over counters, I don't know which is mine and which is his, unless I pick them up and turn them over.
And then you start to things move on the map, because the counters are so thin, they don't weigh down. So...
All right, so I made a little list of notes of things I liked and didn't like about the game.
Yeah, you played it more than I did.
The dependents, if you go to capture them, they have counterattack rules, and counterattack rules are kind of goofy. They get 1 to 2 odds against all attackers, and so they'll stop the capture on a 5 or 6. So if you have 3 of your best warriors in there with 1 dependent, they can only capture them basically on a 5 or a 6, which I thought was a little goofy. I would see like on a 3, 4, 5, and 6 you capture, but on just a 5 or 6, I don't know.
I think they want to make that a little more suspenseful.
Yeah, I guess so.
That you don't move into the hex and grab the woman and throw her over the shoulder. It takes a few turns. It takes a few turns.
Yeah.
And she might be kind of feisty.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I liked is there's 5 scenarios, which is excellent for a microgame. That's one thing Metagaming was good at. They always had plenty of scenarios, like that Metagaming game Artifact, where you're fighting on the moon. That one had a bunch of scenarios too, something I really liked about it. And all the scenarios are good except the Territorial ritual battle. In that one, you have to make attacks at the worst odds possible. Seriously. And so you get an attacker killed result. So you're trying to get an attacker killed result on you, and in the initial combat you have there, you don't die, but you get a morale point. And once you get 5 more morale points than the other side has, then you can start attacking to kill. And as the first side that kills one wins. So the problem with having to have 5 more morale points is the game could take 20 hours. If you get a morale point, the other guy gets a morale point and stuff. So, I mean, obviously it's probably not going to take 20, but it takes a long time. And I don't know, it just did not seem right trying to get an attacker killed result on yourself and trying to attack at the worst odds possible. That's like opposite of wargame logic.
Well, I thought what they should do is just it's supposed to be like non-violent combat, sort of like ceremonial combat.
Right.
Just get points for how many points you supposedly inflict on your enemy. How many points? And the guy who scores like 10 points first wins.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You know, it's like if you give them attacker wounded, you get 2 points. Mm-hmm. Or defender retreats, that's 1 point. And, you know, like I said, the first guy who crosses 10 wins.
Yeah, good idea. And one of the other things I like about the game, like we said, it's fun to play, and it's very easy to learn. Basically, the sequence of play is I move, I shoot, you move, you shoot, so it doesn't get any easier than that.
And if you're in the same hex, you have melee.
True, yeah. And there's a few other rules, like there's fires. You can start villages on fires and stuff, and you can capture goods and goats and capture dependents for points in some of the scenarios. My favorite scenario of them all, believe it or not, was a solitaire scenario. It was called the Mastodon Hunt, where you're trying to hunt some mastodons. I don't know, it just seemed really nice for a solitaire scenario, and you don't see many good...
It's a good introductory scenario.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's why I think I like this. Despite its many flaws, I still like this game because the Mastodon Hunt is just so much fun.
Yeah, it is a good game. Just needs better components. I don't know if the author is still alive, but if he is, and I don't know if he signed away his rights to metagaming for the game. But if he didn't, he might want to consider having it republished with better components. I think it would sell.
Larger hexes, larger counters.
Yeah, I would buy it.
Yeah. Easier to read. Also, when it's flipped over, you could tell.
And a little bit of color on the map instead of this right here. This is a little bit too much on the simple side.
Well, I think this is meant to be combat in the open. I mean,
right. But I mean, you can have some colors on the map.
A little green, a little blue. I don't know what the rough terrain would look like.
Yeah. You know?
So.
But anyhow, we recommend it. So if you see it and it's at a reasonable price, definitely pick it up. I think you'll enjoy it. Have a good evening.
All right.